We are Southern Illinois.
Williams claps his hands, hip high snap, looks left, taking time, fade to the end zone. Jay Jones is there in the setting sun, right into his chest for a touchdown.
It's time for Saluki football.
Goes near side, Parker's made the grab, and he's at the 1 yard line. It's a touchdown. Parker was able to sneak it right across the pylon, the front pylon on the near side.
Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Mike Trude's off from vacation of our Saluki football podcast. He finally joins us here inside the Wells production studio alongside Mike Trude, Coach Pat Poore. I am Luke Martin as we recap Thomas More and then preview the Purdue Boilermakers this weekend as SIU got off to a great start, 49-3 winner over Division II Thomas More. And Mike and Coach Poore, I mean, I think that's just the biggest thing, right, is you wanted to see a win, number one. Southern got that win. Got it in dominating fashion, and I think there's many things you can point to because you got a lot of guys into the game as well. So not that you ever, Coach Poore, want to say week one is ever perfect, and our coaches no doubt would not say it was perfect by any stretch, but it's a good start.
Yeah, you always take the win, and the cool thing about coming out of that game was there was some impactful things done, creating the turnovers, just being super efficient on offense. But there was also some teaching moments in there and some things to learn from that game. And, and Nick was on it, right away, post-game. That's the thing from a coaching standpoint. You don't want to delve on the negatives, but that's what you're looking for is, hey, how can we get better? He talks about it all the time, seeing the development of this team and knowing the test that's coming the next week.
Mike, for you, what did you see as the biggest takeaway from week one for SIU?
One of the keys to the game was don't turn the ball over, especially in key times of the ball game. Southern didn't turn the ball over. They played as clean as they possibly could. There were those 3 unsportsmanlike penalties, and Nick addressed those, as Pat said, immediately, not only on the field with those guys and in their face. He got on them right away early, and fortunately, in a game like Southern played, it didn't affect the outcome, but those are the kind of plays where maybe in a key game you do get a big touchdown and it maybe ties the game or puts you ahead. You don't want to commit one of those unsportsmanlike penalties for over-enthusiastically celebrating the touchdown because then you put yourself right back against the wall on the ensuing kickoff and you've lost all that momentum. So really pleased with how they played overall. Getting the turnovers, efficiency on offense, that opening drive. We could talk about the opening drive forever. It's 8 plays, 60-some yards. DJ was on point, hitting different receivers, running it all over the place, and DJ didn't have to run the ball at all, literally, on Saturday night, so they kept that out of the package, and they seemed to keep the tight ends out of, as Purdue did, kept them out of their offensive packages on Saturday night as well. So there's still a lot more that our fans didn't see Saturday night that is still waiting in the wings to showcase.
We talked about on the broadcast, right? DJ Williams starting off the game, I think
11
for 11, which was close to being the school record, which was 15. He ends the night 18-24, 227 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and a rushing touchdown, and just played in 3 quarters. Not even 3 full quarters. 2 1/4, if you want to call it. Just what I loved was just seeing DJ's smile after the game. Immediately when he came up to the office to talk to us, he just couldn't stop smiling. And we all remember the Incarnate Word game, and even though that ended as a win, everyone kind of knew what the news was going to be for DJ, and just walking around the office, it felt like we lost that game because everyone knew how big of an impact DJ was. I was just so happy for him that you could just see the joy of it being back, and I hope it's the beginning of what is a lot of great things to come for him.
Yeah, I agree. And it wasn't just DJ. It was Bohannon who only played, a game and couple snaps last year, and Fensky, who played literally all last year injured in a not great position for him, but because of the other injuries on the line, he had to play where he played last year. He's more comfortable at center. Just so many guys who didn't get a season a year ago, the joy that they had to, not only play, but play a whole game. And there was not one person injured from that two deep that can't go this week. So we never saw that for the last 2 years. So it's just nice to see guys being able to do what they love doing and being able to do it with a smile on their face.
And there may not be a better story, Coach Poor, than Derek Harden. I mean, you think of everything that Big D Hart has been through off the field, on the field. I know Fenske gets a lot of attention, as he should, right? He's an extremely talented guy. But Derek Harden may be the biggest heart and piece of not just the offense, but of this team as they continue to move forward throughout the year.
Yeah, and you have to have those guys in your program. The bleeders, he's worked his tail off, and just unfortunately has had some injuries and that type of thing. And I was really impressed with just the continuity that we showed up front. And some of that's, I think Fenske's at the natural position for him playing center, and that obviously has to help a guy like Derek having that communication with him and the experience that he had. And he's a mature player. I mean, he's been doing this a long time. Yeah. And cool to see a smile on his face, too, to just go out and do what you love and play loose and free and confident.
Good to see Jay Jones find the end zone. Jackson Parker did as well. Fabian McCray, those were the three guys that got touchdowns. Again, it's a development piece that you're going to see throughout the year. One area I'm eager to see is Aiden Quinn, Ryan Schwindeman. As much as what Southern showed week one against Thomas More, I think all of us know, man, there's a lot more in that offensive bag that SIU is hoping that they can see as it goes throughout the year continue to show.
Yeah, tight ends were only targeted maybe 2, maybe 3 times the entire football game, and they weren't needed in the game. When you win 49-3, you can hold some things back, and tight ends, as we've seen over the years, and we'll probably see it again Saturday night because Purdue's got what Rob described as a pretty good tight end room. Tight ends find a way to get open against defenses, no matter what kind of defense and no matter who's playing defense. So both teams may showcase the tight ends a little bit more Saturday night, but I'm anxious to see Schwendy and AJ getting the ball in space, and we know what both of them can do.
You brought up, of course, Rob Blackman is who Mike True's alluding to. He'll join us here on the podcast to talk about Purdue, preview what type of rebuild is going on for Coach Odom. He gives a lot of great stuff, and our fans will no doubt enjoy that interview. Kind of pushing to that running back room. It was an area of focus. I don't think it was really, maybe you want to say, an area of quote-unquote concern, because that has negative connotation when you say concern. But look, LaShawn Lester was not healthy last year, and he would tell you he did not perform at a level that he wanted to. He comes back, and then you bring in Chandler Chapman, of course, Eddie Robinson, Lim Wash, who we were able to see get that touchdown right at the end of the half. Coach Poor, how would you assess how the running back room looked, especially in the different situations that they were put in and how they utilized the different guys?
Yeah, I think it was evident that we're still developing in that room, and it's tough as a running back if you're not the bell cow guy to get in that rhythm and see the same fronts and see how your guys are blocking up front as far as hitting, reading your keys and making the right read and cut and that type of thing. And in our offense, it's very balanced anyway, and there's a lot of different types of run plays. A lot of jet sweep stuff, a lot of wide zone, a lot of gap scheme stuff, and there's probably more to that mentally for the running backs than in some other offenses. But I thought for the most part, they played hard, they took care of the football, and had some impact. At least in spurts, it was like, yeah, boy, that's as good as mid-zone has looked. That's as good as gap schemes looked, coming from not the quarterback running those types of plays.
What I liked was no negative yardage in any rushing play from the running backs all night long. And that was not the case a year ago. Sometimes they'd that zone play and not even get to the line of scrimmage because they wouldn't plant and then get to the line of scrimmage. And we saw a different style, I think, this year of getting north and south as quickly as you possibly can once you see a little bit of a gap. And last year we didn't see very much of that.
I'll tell you. Go ahead, Coach.
And rolls, too, in situations. It was good to see us twice in short yardage. We brought Big Lem in and banged it out. And, that's going to be the case every week. You're going to be in that situation. And alluding to last year, we weren't good in that situation. And, a ton of the games have come down to, at that point, that was a momentum swinger. We didn't pick up that 4th and short.
It was an area I brought up with Coach Hill on our coaches show this week inside Saluki Athletics of when this team made the postseason 2 years ago, it was really that influx of transfers on that defensive line, specifically Tim Varga, Devin Cowan, who made major impacts that seemed to really help everybody else on the defense. Donnie Wingate is, without a question, a massive addition to this defense. And granted, a lot like Purdue, Week 1 was great, and there are a lot of things that we can all be excited about, but it is just one game. You want to see how you continue it throughout the year. But, man, I don't think we are blowing too much smoke when we say Donnie Wingate is going to be a vital part of that Saluki defensive line.
And the thing about Donnie and Jake on the other end, they both spent a lot of time in the backfield Saturday and throughout practices, is they've both done it against our number ones. And we've got a good offensive line, and they've been doing it against both of those tackles on either side of our offensive line. And Donnie's a special talent on that edge. And I just think, how is he at Lindenwood for 3 years in this era of the transfer portal, or did he just blossom really late a year ago and put up incredible numbers and say, okay, now's my time to go check things out? Because from the minute I saw him at the first summer workout, I was, who was this guy and how did we get him? I mean, he's just an unbelievable specimen for that edge rusher.
Yeah, I really think he's one of those kids that he's bet on himself. He's made himself into a good player in those development years that he spent at Lindenwood. And the biggest thing that stands out with both those guys, but especially Donnie, is he's got the package. He's got great get off. He's got great finish ability, and he's blue collar, hard hat, lunch pail. I mean, every snap he's in you, and that's huge to have that type of edge, pressure, and playing ability on both sides.
Well, it frees up the two guys in the middle, and Saturday night the two guys in the middle made a bunch of tackles up and down. They played 8 or 10 guys on that defensive line Saturday night, and when you've got good, and I was going to bring this up with Rob, but I didn't get a chance to, when you have two good edge guys, and I think you and I both commented on Purdue's edge guys, if you've already got good linebackers, they just got better because your edge guys are doing what they need to do, which keeps things in the middle of the field for those linebackers to make those plays. And it's just, if you've got a good front four, if you've got good linebackers, they become great linebackers, and then your guys in the back are that much better as well.
Well, and you just continue, and you led me into where I wanted to go next. And, again, I'm sure all of our Saluki fans are going, is this a repeat of a previous podcast when we bring up the linebackers? And, I mean, there are so – I mean, I know some may think it's whatever, hyperbole, or just, hey, we're just trying to tout the team up. I mean, there are legit guys that are not playing and gain a lot of snaps that could go and start for any other team, especially at our level in the FCS, and be beyond productive. And Andrew Bain spoke about it so highly and so great on our coaches show this week. I mean, he hasn't stopped smiling. You know, he's another guy that's had just a great story and coming back. But you think about Beamer, Andrew Bain, who we're referring to, Colin Bohannock, Shug Walker. There's so many other guys. Chris Presto, who I feel like we forget about because he had to miss a good portion of fall camp, and him being back and now getting back, he is just a machine. I mean, you arguably have 3 to 4 linebackers that could be the number one linebacker on any other team.
Yeah, they're 3, or even with Shug, potentially 4 All-American linebackers. Yes. And you can't have 4 All-Americans on your team at the same position. But that's how good these guys are together. And we've talked about it for 2 years. You could have that entire second unit in, if you want to call it a second unit, and the drop down is next to nothing. They are that productive, and it's all festering off the communication that they've built since Pran has been the new defensive coordinator, and it's just they feed off of each other, and the room, as we've talked about forever, is as competitive as you're going to get. But those guys, because of Coach Mack, they love each other, and what's good for number 1 is good for number 10, and that's what I really like about that group of guys.
Yeah, and don't discount the fact that they're only as good as the guys we just talked about, the guys up front, the bigs inside, the Peyton Reeves, Caden Reeves, Amir, keeping those guys clean to allow them to do some of the things they do. But that whole group has been impressive in our defensive scheme, not only in stopping the run and tackling, but as blitzers and then also as coverage guys. I mean, they've had impact in a lot of defensive play and a lot of those turnovers on Saturday night.
We'll get ready to transition into Purdue, but I think that is now, no doubt, it's going to be something we're going to talk on the back end here as we preview the Boilermakers after we have our conversation with Rob. The secondary is no doubt going to get a much more of a major test this weekend against Purdue. Thomas Moore didn't really challenge Southern much at all in terms of going downfield, being vertical, putting pressure on. Yes, Southern did force 5 turnovers, which that's great. It's a really good number. I think some of those, no doubt, were more self-inflicted than necessarily being forced, but give Southern credit for getting those 5. But, man, that's a part of this team that is no doubt on the outside. People have a lot of questions about. Everyone internally is going, we like our guys. We like our dudes. They're going to show it. But, man, this week I think is where we are really going to see how much Jeremiah McClendon has made an impact on this team, how much Gavin Shepard has really earned his reps during camp. Sebastian Vargas, how far he's come from a year ago. Vinny Pierre, C.J. Parson, guys who are big in that safety room. Bottom line, they're going to get tested a lot this week because I think Purdue is really going to challenge them through the year.
No, I agree, and their job can become much easier if we can get some pressure on Ryan Brown, because he, as Rob, who we will hear from a little bit later, says that Brown is a better runner than he is a passer. He said he's a good passer, not a great passer, at least not so far. So if he doesn't get the perfect step and the perfect lane and perfect everything, then our DBs have a good opportunities to make some plays. If Ryan Brown's allowed to sit back there and just watch the entire play unfold, you or I could complete a pass. So, the defensive backs get put in a precarious position every single play. They can only take somebody for so long, and then it becomes, okay, this one's on you, even though I'm going to get all the issue with it. But it's that next play mentality. They just go right to the next play and go, all right, maybe they got the better of me this time. But I don't think that they're going to get beat that often, very often this year.
Yeah, I had a little bit different take on it because I was impressed with possibly just the maturity of that group, because we did give up some completions, but a lot of times they were in situations where that's what the defense dictated, is like, hey, if they're going to complete a pass, they're going to complete it for 5 yards.
Yeah.
And we didn't get challenged down the field just because of possibly what there are a lot of situations where we're playing cover 2, and we're going to give up a 4 or 5 yard completion on 3rd and 14 or whatever it was. And then even in some of the other situations, we're playing middle of the field closed, 1 high, kind of soft corners, cover 3, and hey, we'll give up a hitch, but they know it's coming, they know it's coming, and just watching in practice, I mean, the competitiveness of those corners versus Fabo and that's what they're going to see. So they know it's coming, and like I said, that was one thing coming out of that game though that was kind of like a question. I was like, hey, they never went downfield on us. We never saw anybody press us and try and run a go route, and how are we going to respond to that against a Big Ten wide receiver?
Yeah, because it's going to happen Saturday night.
Yeah, and they know it. But like I said, my take on that was how corners are. You're on an island out there, and all of a sudden they complete 3 balls on you, for 14 yards. You can lose your stuff. It's kind of like they're picking on me. Not necessarily within the scheme of the defense. That's what they should do. They should take that.
Well, let's go ahead and now transition into our interview this week. We catch up with the guy who's been around Purdue football and just Purdue athletics in general for a long time, 20-plus years as part of the Purdue radio network. It's Rob Blackman, who we welcome on to talk about the Boilers this week. We continue our Saluki football podcast series here throughout the year, talking the opponent, getting ready for the upcoming Saluki game on Saturday. And Saturday night, it's going to be at Ross-Ade Stadium. Last time the Salukis were there were only about 31,000 people. I think there's going to be way more there this Saturday night for the start. Of course, the continuing start, the Barry Odom era, phenomenal start for Purdue, 31-0 win over the Ball State Cardinals. Here to join us to talk about that win and preview the Boilermakers is my good friend. He's part of the Purdue Football Radio Network. He's the play-by-play voice for Purdue men's basketball, and now the host. I got to get that in. Now one of the hosts for the Pete Sakes podcast that just got started this year, Rob Blackman. Rob, welcome, brother. It's good to see you. Thanks so much for taking time. And here we are, man, right back in the midst of football season.
Yeah, crazy to think about how quickly that calendar seems to flip to September, but it certainly has done that. It's nice to talk with you, Luke, and the rest of your crew. I find it interesting you brought up that attendance for the last time SIU and Purdue played. You're right. That was a bit of a dark time in Purdue football history. Daryl Hazel was our head coach, and we were really laboring. It was so long ago that I was reminded on Tuesday that a guy who now works in our sports information department was actually a kicker on that Purdue team. Wow. He kicked in that game a couple of times against SIU, and he's an old man now with a couple of kids.
Watch it.
So that's how long ago that was. It's been a little bit. It's been a minute since Purdue and SIU played in football.
Rob, to really describe, as you said, you've been around Purdue football a long time, and you've seen some of the really good days, obviously during the Coach Tiller era. Obviously, Coach Brom coming in and being able to turn around. Then coming off of Coach Walters in the last 2 years. And, just like a small stat that, we were noticing in our prep that Purdue scored 13 first-quarter points all of last year. They scored 14 against Ball State. And no question.
That many. I didn't even think it was that many.
I know. I mean, it was just really staggering just for us that don't follow Purdue football on the daily. Like, for our fan base, describe just kind of where Purdue football has been, the trajectory it's been on, and right now, what is the task at hand for Coach Odom in trying to ride this ship and get it turned back in the right direction?
Yeah, so I can only obviously speak from my personal experience, 22 years for me on the broadcast team, and I truly have been at both ends of it. It wasn't that long ago, 3 years ago, as a matter of fact, Purdue played in the Big Ten championship game, played Michigan for the Big Ten championship, and then, of course, last year Purdue finished dead last in the Big Ten, and that wasn't the first time that has happened, by the way, in my Purdue career. We've had a couple of last-place finishes. So, yeah, I've seen both ends of it, certainly. And, it's kind of similar. I mentioned Daryl Hazel a minute ago. It's very similar for Barry Odom, what it was for Jeff Brom. When Brom came in, Purdue was coming off the Daryl Hazel era. Things did not look very optimistic, certainly for Purdue football. Things were trending in the wrong direction. That's putting it mildly. So the fan base was ready. They ramped up and they were ready for a new coach, a new style, a new way of thinking. And Jeff Brom, not only did he bring that, but more importantly, he brought wins. Purdue did go to a bowl game that first year under Coach Brom, and the fans started to come back. Well, we see that a little bit with Barry Odom. Now, granted, it's a very small sample size. He's only had one game under his belt. But he, too, is coming off a situation where Purdue is in the basement in the Big Ten under Ryan Walters, and the Purdue fan base is hungry to get back to at least winning some football games. And, Purdue had 54,000, right at 54,000 at that season opener against Ball State on Saturday. So you could tell the fan base is hungry, to see a new product and see if indeed the product is improved. And it was. It was in game one, and I understand that one game does not a season make. But Purdue just looked more disciplined. They looked more organized. They looked like they had a staff that is comprised of a bunch of guys who have been there and done that, which was not the case before with Ryan Walters, who was a first-time head coach. So I know this is a long-winded answer, but if you just want to take that small sample size of game one, Purdue had only 3 penalties committed. Purdue had 0 turnovers committed, which, as you guys know, in the first game of the year, that's pretty hard to do. To be that certainly isn't perfect, but pretty seamless for a team playing its first game ever, and with 72 new players on the roster, mind you. So hopefully that's a start in the right direction. At least it shows this team is maybe a little more disciplined than it's been. Maybe has a little bit better understanding of what it takes to play winning football. So, but again, I'm going to avoid getting too overly optimistic, because last year Purdue won its season opener 49-0, and then did not win another game the rest of the year. Went 0-11 after that. So I don't think that's what's in store for this year's team. But after what we saw last year, I'm not holding my breath.
Barry, I think the biggest difference is in previous regimes, when a coaching change was made, you couldn't overhaul the roster, which is what Barry was forced and had to do. And talk about that overhaul, and maybe from your perspective of maybe every other day, every 2 days, every day there was another player committing to come to Purdue, and what that was like for you guys following the program. And how did Barry Odom put together 80-some new players on this football team and get them to gel even as well as they did, to play as clean as they did this past weekend?
Yeah, and 54 of those are transfers, and it's worth noting 7 of the 54, they did come from UNLV with Coach Odom. So I know that's not a big number, but it certainly helps, because the 7 that did are key players on this team, either starters or certainly within the 2 deeps, and a couple of them are captains, were named captains. So the familiarity there helped. Certainly the fact that he had the opportunity to bring a lot of his coaches with him from UNLV, didn't bring all of them, but certainly brought a couple that are pretty significant, and also brought some guys who maybe didn't come with him from UNLV from a coaching standpoint, but who had worked with him in the past at some other stops, whether they be Memphis or Missouri, or Arkansas. So a lot of familiarity there from a coaching standpoint. I think that certainly helped. But and bringing 7 guys from UNLV certainly helped. But yes, it was pretty amazing to see how cleanly played, as I said, that first game was, with the no turnovers, and more importantly, the limited number of penalties. Everyone seemed to get lined up right, at least from my standpoint, from what I can tell from the broadcast booth. There were no pre-snap penalties. Again, there were very few penalties. There was one fumble that Purdue, luckily the ball went out of bounds, so Purdue didn't lose the possession there. So just, to have that many guys gel all at the same time. And I would also add, a lot of folks would talk about, you had those 15 practices in the spring to help. Well, I don't know how much they helped, because after spring practice, Purdue had like 24 or 25 guys hit the portal. So you had, there are guys you're trying to replace all of a sudden come, mid-April. It was pretty amazing. Now, I would also add this is not his first go-round. He had a very similar situation at UNLV, did Coach Odom. When he was there 2 years ago for his first season there, they had over 50, I think it was 55 new players that they had to try to incorporate, and they won a lot of games. So obviously we're not comparing apples to apples here. The Big Ten is a little bit more stiff competition as a league than what he was in at UNLV. But the fact is, again, not his first go-around, but yes, to answer the question directly, how he was able to pull that off, I'm not sure, because that was about as seamless as you can play for a game with a whole bunch of new faces. Literally, one of those games where every fan, Purdue fan, even the diehards, had to have a roster in their hand, because they weren't sure who 75% of the players were.
You feel like some of that, not only the roster assembling, but just that staff, that continuity, bringing Vance with them, Cornell with them, adding Henshaw, James Shebest, one of the best special teams coordinators from way back, kind of has alluded to how they played that first game in terms of the discipline and all the things that Barry stands for, and being able to do it kind of again.
And that's such a good point. I should have mentioned Coach Shebest. That's probably where Purdue, I think, is going to have an edge this year on most of the teams they play, because he's just such an outstanding special teams coordinator. But yeah, all those guys you mentioned, and you look at Darren Henshaw. He's worked with Coach Odom before. He's the quarterbacks coach, but last year he was an offensive coordinator for UCF. Was for a few years. And in some ways he takes a bit of a step back, having to be a quarterbacks coach now, instead of being the OC. And Purdue's offensive coordinator is a guy who, while he was at USC for the last 3 years and had the title of OC, did not call the plays. I'm talking about Coach Henson. Lincoln Riley called the plays. So he was an offensive coordinator who wasn't calling any plays. And now he's the offensive coordinator at Purdue, and he does get to call the plays. So it's a mix and a match, as I mentioned, of guys that either had been with Barry at UNLV or, again, he had worked with in the past. There are no new coaches here that he is unfamiliar with, having not crossed paths somewhere down the line. So I do think that certainly helps, especially when what you're referencing, when you're trying to implement what the team's supposed to be all about from an attitude and effort strategy. Everyone understands what Barry Odom is about from a coaching standpoint, so it's much easier to relay that to your team when you know what the head coach stands for. And again, I'm trying to not be overly optimistic, but man, game one certainly has me feeling like Purdue's headed in the right direction.
Talk to us about Ryan Brown. He was there and won the job, and give us an idea of what Saluki fans are going to see out of the signal caller for Purdue.
Yeah, so a couple things. He was the only Big Ten quarterback that threw for over 300 yards on opening weekend, so that was kind of impressive. 311 yards, I think it ended up being. Threw for a couple scores, ran for one as well. But specifically to answer the question, he really is a dual-threat quarterback. Probably better runner than passer, although certainly his passing acumen looked much improved in that game Saturday from what we had seen from last year. Does not have a lot of experience. He did start 2 games last year for Purdue. He was the backup quarterback and really only played when necessary because of injury. But he's an interesting story because when Barry Odom took the job, Ryan Brown hit the road. He did not think it was going to be a good fit for him, so he spent all spring at North Carolina. I don't know if you've heard, but Bill Belichick's the head coach of UNC. No one talks about that, I don't think. So he spent the spring under Coach Belichick, and then circled back to Purdue and basically met with Coach Odom and said, hey, maybe I want to rethink my decision here. And from what we saw from UNC Monday night, maybe that wasn't a bad idea. But here he is back at Purdue. So he is familiar with Purdue, certainly not familiar with Barry Odom, but he did win the job. And let's not try to fool ourselves. I think what ultimately happened is Ryan Brown saw during spring ball that Purdue really was in need of a quarterback, and that if he came back to Purdue, he'd have as good a chance as anyone in winning the job, and he did. Better runner than passer. Certainly seems to be improving in that category. The one thing that did strike me, not only with Ryan Brown, but offensively with Purdue Saturday, and look, you don't know. It's a brand new staff. You have no idea what you're going to expect. You try to maybe assume. I think most of us assume that Purdue is going to be a run-heavy football team, especially early in the season, because that's what Barry Odom did at UNLV. They were a run-heavy team. They did not do a lot of passing, a lot of quarterback runs, designed runs, not a lot of passing. And Purdue actually was 50-50 passing and running. I think it was 30-29 scrimmages. Passing to running on Saturday, and Purdue didn't run the ball very well. Less than 100 yards rushing as a team, but they did pass it well. Yeah. So that did surprise, I think, most in the building. We were expecting a run-heavy type of a day. That's not how it shook out. But I think the fact that Ryan Brown has proven that he can be a good passer. I wouldn't say great. Maybe by the end of the season I can say great, but certainly good enough to get the job done against a Ball State. But for the SIU fans that'll be watching, this is a guy who's not afraid to tuck and run. when the pocket breaks down, and is, again, fairly accurate passing. I think when they broke it down, he had 4 misfires, I think, on Saturday. I think he had 6 incompletions, but 2 were drops. So 4 only really at the feet of the quarterback. So, yeah, he's, again, I guess probably not all bad. You spent, a month learning under Bill Belichick. I'm certain that probably didn't hurt. But, yeah, I think he would tell you he made the right decision coming back to Purdue.
Well, what's it say about him, though, Rob, is not just that he came back and won the job, but you don't see very many guys, even though he had experience, obviously, right at Purdue, come back, win the job, and get voted team captain. What's that say about him?
Yeah, that's a good call, Luke. And, a guy that, look, there aren't a lot of Purdue players left over from the old regime. But I could see there maybe could have been some hard feelings from those few left over that, hey, man, you left us and now you're back. But he has earned the respect and the trust of his teammates, and he's been a great leader. He really has. When camp started, Barry Odom was very adamant about, we have 4 quarterbacks we think that can play, and we're going to let them all take first-team reps until about 2 weeks to go, until the opening game. And he stuck to that plan. They all 4 got roughly the same amount of reps. And then when it came time to make that decision for who's going to be the starting quarterback, there are a number of things that led into it, but the one thing Barry Odom talked about was he just felt like Ryan had become such a vocal leader that he had the attention of the offense and had the attention of the team. And he was the one voice a quarterback voice that everyone was paying attention to. And so that made a very big difference in what ultimately gave him the leg up to earn the starting quarterback position. To be elected captain, that's a pretty big deal for him as a guy who, as I said, April of last year thought he was going to be playing for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Yeah. So pretty cool story for him. I would also mention, his roommate and his old high school running mate is Fletcher Lawyer on the Purdue basketball team.
How about that?
Yeah, they're both from Clarkston, Michigan originally. They didn't finish high school in Clarkston, but that's where they grew up. I wonder if maybe Fletcher didn't reach out. I wonder if Fletcher didn't go to the spring game and then when it was over, call Ryan and say, hey, man, we need a quarterback. Why don't you get back here to Purdue? You can be my roommate. I'll save a room for you.
I'm sure Coach Painter was having practice.
Yeah, right. I don't know if that's what happened, but I would not be surprised if that's what happened.
I know it was a small sample size, but Ryan has made a good connection early with that receiver room. Both Branch and Jackson. I mean, you look on film. Really looked like he established some chemistry there, and I know that was kind of a position that was kind of an unknown going into the season.
Yeah, and I would also add, from a Purdue standpoint, Purdue's going to get even better at wide receiver. They did not play with Denylon Morissette, the Georgia transfer. He did not play because of injury on Saturday. I do think he will play against the Salukis. He looks like he's going to be healthy enough to play in that game. And he's probably a starter when he's back. So that's certainly going to help. And, another guy that only caught a couple of balls, a guy named Nitro Tuggle, is also really good. He's another Georgia transfer. So Purdue has a couple of guys that they feel pretty deep in that wide receiver room, to your point. Michael Jackson III and Ahmad Branch seemed to get all of the attention, and they should have. They scored touchdowns Saturday. But that wide receiver room is actually pretty deep. The one thing Purdue did not do a good job of, and all the offensive coaches were pretty adamant about this, they did not do a good job of getting the ball to the tight ends. And they feel like that tight end room might be the best room on the offensive side of the football. But I don't know, I think we maybe had one catch from a tight end maybe, and they were not happy about that. They feel like their tight ends need to be way more involved than they were. So we might see some of that Saturday. But, that wide receiver room is pretty deep. A lot of SEC transfers in there and guys that can play a little bit.
Rob, defensively for Purdue, what was the biggest thing they had to overhaul?
Oh, boy. Well, now, I'm not trying to be funny here, but Purdue was dead last in the Big Ten in points allowed. Purdue was dead last in the Big Ten in rushing yards allowed. Purdue was dead last in the Big Ten in passing yards allowed. Purdue was dead last in points allowed, yards allowed, and only had one fumble recovery. Now, I am not trying to be funny here. Purdue had one fumble recovery last year on defense for the entire season. 12 games. So when you ask what has to be overhauled, I think I just answered the question.
Yeah.
Every single aspect of that defense needed to be overhauled. Purdue was very vanilla on Saturday. Coach Odom admitted that in the post-game radio interview with us on the broadcast. He said they didn't do a lot of scheming, nothing too exotic. On Saturday, pretty much played their base defense with base coverages. A couple of blitz packages here or there, but nothing crazy. Because, quite frankly, they have so many new guys that they don't feel like they can get real exotic right now. Now, you get a couple games under your belt, sure, they might try to get a little bit more fancy, if that's the right word defensively. But right now, they're not doing that. Purdue's really been helped, I will say this, by, again, UNLV transfers. None better than Manny Powell, who's a middle linebacker. Wears number 16 for your fans that'll be listening to the game on Saturday to you guys who are watching on TV. He played really well in that game, and so did a transfer named Charles Correa, who's also playing linebacker. But when you look at Purdue on defense, it's basically all guys who were playing somewhere else last year. And so I think they feel like the talent level in that side of the football is pretty darn good. But again, getting them to mesh, and I think Purdue played at last count, it was 24, maybe 25 different guys on defense Saturday, and it wasn't because it was a blowout. That was the plan. Again, because they're trying to figure out who can play and who can't. So I think we'll see the same thing this coming Saturday against SIU. I think a lot of different guys will play, simply because they're trying to get this thing figured out, who can play and who can't. But I will say this, even for being very vanilla, I think Ball State only had like 200 yards of offense. So that's pretty good. Now, Ball State's not great offensively. They're really struggling at the quarterback position. But it's a good start to play, again, as basic as they did defensively. But that's Barry Odom's side of the ball. I mean, I know Mike Shear is his defensive coordinator, but that's where Barry Odom makes his money, is coaching up the defense. So, a lot of talent. I think this is defense that'll be good on Saturday against SIU. I think by week 8 or 9 it'll be really good. It's just going to take it a while. Yeah,
you alluded to it, and that's right in Coach Odom's wheelhouse, being a defensive guy, is the fact that they did play clean on defense. Like, you can see it on film. I mean, I know that package of his, and everybody had their fits, and people were in the right spots, and still played hard and fast. And in a first ball game, that's always your worry: a busted coverage, a guy getting out of his gap, a safety not fitting right. And I broke that game down, and they graded out really high in terms of just defensive assignments. And I know that's a big thing with Coach Odom is, it's all about doing your job. And like you said, did it with a bunch of guys. The Riel kid, I mean, he played in a lot of different spots. Walkie played in a lot of different spots. And that kind of lets you know that there's a lot more to that package, but they still got to execute it.
And you sound like you were in our coach's film room after the game.
He probably was.
He's in ours, I can tell you that much. He's in ours, yes.
I'm telling you, those are the exact words that those defensive coaches were talking about. And Barry Odom talked about it on our podcast. Not very exotic defensively because of what you just said. All they wanted to see was defensively. Are we getting our fits correct? Are we in the right gap? Are we in the right spot? Do we make the tackle when we have a chance to make the tackle? Are we rallying to the ball? All the basic fundamentals you think about on defensive football, that's all the staff was looking for Saturday. They weren't looking for anything out of the ordinary. The one thing they were disappointed with is no turnovers. Didn't come away with a turnover. But again, like I told you, last year we only had one fumble recovery for the whole year, so Purdue fans are used to not taking the ball away. We didn't take it away at all.
Well, I was kind of trained by Coach Odom and Coach Ford when I used to work the Missouri camps. I was kind of their guinea pig. I threw a lot of balls at the old Missouri camps in the summer and got coached up by them.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to ask about Maccabee, the running back.
Sure.
You mentioned, the team was just about 50-50 run to pass, and Maccabee obviously the feature back, and he looked good in a lot of situations on Saturday. Had obviously the most rushing yardage. Tell us about him. He's a guy who stayed because of his academic career. He probably could have transferred and played somewhere else and done really, really well, but because of Purdue's phenomenal engineering program, you've got a keeper in Maccabee.
And to his credit, I talked earlier about, I've seen both ends of it in my career. He's seen both ends, but he's only been here 5 years. He was on that team that played for a Big Ten championship. He was on that team that finished dead last in the Big Ten. So he's seen it in a very short amount of time. But yeah, he's the heart and soul of the offense. Make no mistake about that. Fifth-year guy, only ran for 56 yards on Saturday. He has a chance. It would take a Herculean effort, but he does have a chance to become Purdue's all-time leading rusher, which would be quite a feat for him. He'll have to go for about another 1,100 yards or so before the season's over, but at least realistically he does have a chance. But yeah, he's a wonderful story from southern Indiana. Boonville, Indiana, was a walk-on. Joined the team as a walk-on, and he's told the story on our podcast, just kind of hoping to maybe make the travel squad. And next thing you know, he's playing as a redshirt freshman and playing some pretty big snaps for Purdue, but stayed at Purdue through all of the coaching changes and those kinds of things because he wants to have a mechanical engineering degree from Purdue. And he had a great line on our podcast when he joined us a couple weeks ago. He said, I have a 40-year plan, not a 4-year plan. And I thought that was such a great line for a young man, a college-age student, to have figured that out already, that eventually you don't just get to keep playing football forever. You eventually have to do something else, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know, depending on your perspective. But, yeah, mature guy, way mature beyond his years, great family, the truth of the matter is he was brought to Purdue, has a walk-on by Jeff Brom's staff because of what he did in track and field. He was a state champ in the long jump and state runner-up in the high hurdles. He was a good football player, but certainly his athleticism really was shining on the track, in track and field, and that's one of the reasons they let him come on as an invited walk-on, because they thought, well, if the guy, is this good at track and field, obviously he can probably help us somewhere. And as they say, the rest is history. So great guy, leader of the offense, make no mistake about it, and a young man that has it figured out, which is always nice to see for a guy in his young 20s. Because I know when I was his age, I didn't have it figured out, that's for sure.
None of us radio TV guys ever have it figured out.
That's why we're working in radio and TV.
Yes.
I never got it figured out.
Rob, before we let you go, looking at this game on Saturday, Purdue's 14-0 all-time against the FCS. 6 of those games have been against Indiana State. They played Eastern Kentucky twice, and had one game against Illinois State, one game against the Dogs back in 2014, played Eastern Illinois in 2007, Western Illinois in 2010, Northern Colorado 2008, and SEMO in 2011. And really, to be honest with you, Rob, none of those games were really close. The closest Purdue ever came to losing to an FCS team was back in 2013, the year prior, in Coach Hazel's first year against Indiana State. That was a one-possession game. That's the only game that's been one possession. You flip it for SIU under Coach Hill's tenure here. This will be his 10th FBS game. In his previous 9, only 2 haven't been within 2 possessions. So Southern's had success to stay in these games, to make them close. Purdue in these games really haven't been very close or competitive. As you kind of sense it, wrap your head around it, and you dive in to SIU and look ahead to this weekend, what do you kind of just expect in terms of a game on Saturday night at Ross-Ade Stadium?
Luke, let me share a funny story with you before I answer that. You're taking me down memory lane there. You took me back to 2013. I remember that game very well. It was the season opener. Purdue beat Indiana State by, 6 points? It's a very close game.
Yeah.
It was 6, yeah. We are walking to the parking lot after the game, and our sideline reporter, Kelly Kitchell, who played at Purdue, he says to me, "Man, do you think that's the only game we're going to win this year?" I said, "You're crazy, man. We're just a little bump in the road to start the season. We'll win 5 or 6. Well, that was the only game we won that year. We went 1-11 after that. So thanks for taking me down that memory. Again, having been at both ends of the spectrum here. But look, here's what I see from SIU, and I certainly am no expert. Coach Odom spoke on this on our podcast earlier in the week. Obviously, Coach Hill has had great success, 10, 11 years there at SIU. You're ranked in the top 20 in FCS football. Obviously, that guy knows what he's doing. the one thing you have going for you, at least from game one, and again, I know not one game does not make a season, but your ability to take the ball away. I know the 5 takeaways against Thomas More is a bit of a concern for Purdue because, again, Purdue had no takeaways defensively. You give the ball up 5 times to an opponent, you're going to be in trouble on Saturday. So that is a point of emphasis for Purdue. And then DJ Williams, your quarterback, was impressive. And I know he didn't play the whole game. I didn't have to with the numbers he put up. But, I think 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. The quarterback is a real concern. DJ is a real concern for the Purdue coaching staff on defense. I know it because I've heard him say it. So if Purdue wants to have success, don't turn the ball over and don't let DJ Williams have a career day. Those will be the 2 keys, at least, that I'll be looking for on Saturday.
Rob, before we let you go, it's one of the things I feel like I always have to ask you about when we have these type of conversations. I wish I grabbed it. It's actually just over here to my left. I have Cliz's bobblehead here with me in our studio. Of course, Larry Clisby, the longtime voice of Purdue men's basketball, is the reason why I got connected to Rob and ultimately got into this field. I talk to these guys all the time, Rob, of, man, what I try to make our chemistry and how we feel on the air, our memories of just, hey, our connection, how much of a family feel that is exactly what you, Cliz, Ralph at that time, Elliot Bloom, of course, who's still around the program, of course, Coach Painter, who we were able to catch up with this week to talk about our good friend Rodney Watson going into our Hall of Fame. Man, just – I'm actually going to be showing the picture of me and Cliz when he met me that summer before I ultimately met you, and then when I got to see you guys at Rutgers multiple years later on when I was starting my professional career. How much do you, one, still think of Cliz, and which I know is often, especially I know a lot during basketball season, but 2, how special it is to really have that connection with the Purdue Football Radio Network, Purdue Basketball. Like when you listen to your broadcast, you can tell all of you guys get along and love being with each other. And that's always been something that I tried to bring here in what we do here and what I've always tried to do, because I just feel that's what you, Tim Newton, of course, the lead play-by-play guy, I know Mark Herman joined the booth this year. That's what you guys have just always done regardless of who it's been through the years.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Cliz bobblehead because I have it right here in my office.
There you go.
So I can always see the Cliz when he's joining me here. I think about the Cliz every day, and that's not hyperbole. Think about him every day. Sometimes for 5 seconds, sometimes for 5 minutes. The a lot of your SIU fans are not going to be familiar with Larry Clisby, but longtime play-by-play voice of Purdue basketball. And did Purdue football for about 10, 11 years. The problem was when he was doing Purdue football, we were terrible in football. And he ultimately, and he'll be the first to tell you this if he were still here, because he used to tell this to anyone who would listen, the reason he got fired from doing Purdue football is he was so negative. And as he would say, I was only negative because we were winning 1 or 2 games a year. What was I supposed to say?
I was just telling the truth.
He was just telling the truth. What he was seeing on the field, I don't think the folks in the athletic administration wanted him to be quite so honest. So that cost him the opportunity in football. But, yeah, what a great opportunity for me. Luke, I think you would say, I feel pretty confident in saying that one of the reasons you ended up in the career you are in is because of Larry Clisby and the guidance and inspiration that he gave you. I can say the same. The only reason I'm at Purdue for 22 years is because Larry Clisby signed off on me 22 years ago. I was a young guy trying to get in the radio network business at Purdue, and, he was the lead dog. And it wasn't a matter of, hey, we're going to give you this guy named Rob Blackman as your broadcast partner. It was a matter of, would you like to have this guy named Rob Blackman as your broadcast partner? And if he didn't sign off on me, you and I aren't doing this conversation right now. I'm probably still in Mount Carmel, Illinois, where I started my career, calling games for the Golden Aces.
Go Aces, baby, go Aces.
Yes, sir. I'm still down there working in the old southeastern Illinois corridor of the country. I basically owe, I wouldn't say my whole career, but darn near most of it, Larry Clisby signing off on me 20-some years ago. So there's not a day that goes by that I do not think about him. God bless his wonderful soul, and may he rest in peace.
No question. And I still remember the game. It was when Robbie Hummel and those guys were freshmen, and it was Florida International, and FIU got off to like an 18-0 lead in the game.
Yeah.
And
Cliz
looks.
Worse than that.
Cliz looks at me and goes, "You ain't coming back." So
Yeah. I think we got down 25 and came back and won.
Oh, I mean, yeah, Purdue came back to win. It was a crazy game. Of course, Cliz is like, "Hey, I can't get you into the big game, but come to a game that we'll probably dominate." And then it's like, man, we're getting our butt kicked, and like this is.
Nice to meet you, Luke. Bye.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Luke, and so long. But Rob, we could talk to you all day long. We know your schedule's busy, but thanks so much for coming on, sharing so many great memories, and informing our fans of what to expect about Purdue this weekend. And look forward to seeing you come by our booth and catch up with us on game day, my friend.
Yeah, that'll be fun. My father-in-law is an SIU grad, so it's a house divided around here this weekend.
He's pretty intelligent.
Yeah. He actually ended up being a doctor, you see. He didn't get into broadcasting like the rest of us idiots. He got a real job.
Rob, my sister's a Purdue grad, so I've heard it all week as well.
Yeah, so you can empathize.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big thank you to Rob Blackman for taking time. Good to go down memory lane with Rob, who's just one of the all-time just great people in the business and does an outstanding job with everything he does for Purdue. Okay, let's talk about this game and really see where it looks like from a SIU perspective. These are games that we've talked about for a long time. Southern has been competitive in these games. You even think of even some really good teams with NFL talent. I think of Ole Miss leading at halftime. There's many more games and many more of those examples. But, man, it always seems like this is a week that SIU is always prepared and always ready to go toe-to-toe and not back down from a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these games, playing up that level, and it's playing up a level, because nowadays it's not only it's the money now, because Lord knows what these Big Ten teams are paying these student athletes compared to what Southern is able to afford some of their players. So, I mean, we're truly playing a professional football team. I mean, it's like playing maybe the 29th team in the NFL, but it's still an NFL team. So it's a good Big Ten team, regardless of whether Purdue wins another game all year or if not. It's still a good team. Southern has to play I'm not going to say a perfect game, because I don't think Purdue's going to play a perfect game, but Southern has to take advantage of opportunities. Fourth down situations, they've got to convert those when they decide to take those. We always talk about unfortunate turnovers, and that's turnovers in the red zone. That's turnovers on your side of the field that they might be able to go for a quick strike, staying in the game. If Purdue gets off to a 14 or 17-point lead, Southern's been able to stem those tides in the past and figure out a scheme to slowly work your way back, but you don't want to fall 17-0 to a team that is starving like Purdue is, to continue what they did a week ago and keep that momentum going. So Southern's got to play a really, really good game. I don't think they have to play perfect.
No, you're exactly right. And, having been in these kind of games, we're on the other side of the fence this week as compared to last week. And, looking back on the games that I was a part of, a lot of it was, man on man, guy to guy, there weren't a whole bunch of mismatches, and you went into that game confident in that fact, but it still came back to you have to, one, seize momentum with a big play or, an important drive, and Nick's really good at picking apart defenses and, in these kind of games, and something that's there, and then hit those calls. And then two, responding to, like what you were talking about, Mike. Hey, maybe they do come out and they're on fire, and you go down 10-0. You got to respond to that, and it's like it's not over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've done a really good job in these type of games of staying competitive and fighting our way back in and hitting a play. And the last thing I'll say is, for us, it's being able to finish some of these games, because we've been, we alluded to it, Kansas State, we're up at half. Memphis, we're up at half. Ole Miss, we're up at half. And it came down to us not converting a fourth down, or that bad mistake, or, a turnover. Whereas like the Northwestern game, we hit on all those plays. We capitalized on the momentum that we had, and then we fought it to the end and finished it, whether it would be offensively or defensively. And I think that's got to be something that's really beneficial to our team right now, is to be able to reference those games, and it's like, hey, we've been here. We've been this. You guys are a Saluki football team, and this is how we address these games. This is how we play in these games, and it's been done. You know, there's a bar set there.
And also, you just think back to last year, right? Going into the BYU game, granted that was the season opener, but BYU was coming off disappointing year. There weren't a lot of there were high expectations, no doubt, internally, because it's a fan base and a program that's won a lot. But they were coming off a very subpar year for them. And we left Provo thinking, I think that BYU team's pretty good. And ultimately, they almost went all the way to the college football playoff. The point being is, on Saturday, hope it does go Southern's way and can be a game that we're going to remember for a long time. But it's also that fact where, hey, BYU turned out to be a really good team. And that day when they won and they beat Southern last year 41-13, that said a lot more about BYU and how good they were than necessarily where Southern was. I know a lot of people, when you get to these games, look, if SAU finds a way to win on Saturday, I know Coach Hill and the coaching staff, when we talk about things like this, want to plug their ears. But a lot of people will be like, man, you know, how could Purdue just not beat an FCS team? And it's like, well, give credit to SIU in the same way. Yeah. Purdue, no doubt, coming off a year. I mean, those numbers that Rob ran through, embarrassing how bad. I mean, embarrassing how bad they were defensively. But you know what? Coach Odom's a really good coach, and if he finds a way to figure out, it's okay to tip your cap in these games. Yeah. I'm just really excited that, one, you get an opportunity to play them because there's a lot of schools at our level. Southern's still the last school to beat a Power 5, Power 4 team, which was Northwestern. No FCS team's been able to do it since.
It's game 2 of a long season,
and
you learn about yourself every week, every snap, every quarter when you go back through it. And that's a great point, Luke, is, you know, you're always looking for the positive, even if you don't win this type of game. But it's still, you're still a competitor. It's still disheartening when you look back over the years. It's like, man, statistically, we should have won that K-State game. Statistically, we should have won that Ole Miss game. You know, that now it's like nobody wants to schedule you, you know.
Well, and the build off of that, Coach Poor, and both of you can add into it. Everyone talks about, of course, the win at IU, which, Mike, you called on TV that day in Bloomington, and then the following year against Northern Illinois. Think prior to that, you go back to 2002, double overtime at Eastern Michigan, come up short. The year after that, didn't play an FBS game, but 2004, go to Northern Illinois, lose by 1, 23-22. Next year in 2005, Western Michigan had a guy by the name of Greg Jennings who turned out to be a pretty darn good football player. That was a one-possession game, 35-28. Those are 3 right there intermixed with those others that you're talking about. I mean, 6 FBS wins is a lot for a program at the FCS level. Nick, of course, has been a part of 5 of 6 as a coach and a player. But, man, that's where you're right. The competitor said, you're like, man, that number should be maybe 8 or 9.
Big time. Big time.
Drop two-point conversion.
Believe me, when you're old retired Coach Forrest sitting on the dock looking at the lake, you're like, God dang it, man. If we could have just made a play in Manhattan that day, you know, I'm walking out of K-State going, see you, BA.
Yeah, which obviously North Dakota feels that way too, coming up just short of the weekend at Kansas State as well. Okay, we really dove deep into Purdue with Rob, so I don't want to necessarily rehash a ton of that. Just on our way out, guys, what do you see as just the biggest thing you have your eye on for the game on Saturday? If Southern makes it a fun day and a fun night at Ross-Ade Stadium, what will Southern ultimately do to make it a fun night?
I think they're going to have to keep the running back in check. He had, 31 yards, I think, maybe more against
Ball State.
Against Ball State on Saturday. Maybe he had 15 carries, 50-some-odd yards, something like that. He was their leading rusher, but they held him under 100. I think
59 yards.
Okay, Southern's got to hold him under 100 yards, or the group. They can keep the group under 100 yards. And then their receiving core, I think, is good. I think they're very good. can Ryan Brown, their quarterback, come up to their level? Because they are, I think, from what Rob told us and from what we saw, and they're going to have another guy back possibly this week, that their receiving core is going to be good. They're going to test our DBs, and I think that's the key. Can we keep them from a lot of explosive plays? You can't keep those guys from none, but I think explosive plays kept to a minimum is going to help Southern's cause tremendously.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Mike. I was going to say we have to win the explosive play, and those are those momentum type plays.
Yes.
You know, not necessarily even gimmicky type plays, but just, you know, rail routes and, you know, just hitting a post and those kind of things that get you going, and all of a sudden it's like there's that belief like, hey, we can get this thing done. And then obviously not giving up the big plays defensively, and maybe even kind of creating some doubt in there, you know, make them prove they can go 80 yards and finish a drive. And for us, it's finishing drives with touchdowns. You know, field goals are great and they look good on paper statistically, but you score touchdowns in these types of games, a lot of times you end up being right where you want to be, you know, and have a great opportunity to win them. And I think then special teams, you know, we've got to avoid the big mistake, you know, a drop punt, or, you know, you give up a big return or a block punt. And early in the season, a lot of times that's when you see that, and even just being guarded again. You know, Barry Odom's an aggressive, good coach. You know, the fake punts, you know, the onside kicks, those kind of things is like you still got to be really prepared for that type of stuff.
When you look at the last 5 FBS wins, which Coach Hill's been a part of, all of those 5, Southern has had 1 turnover or less in all those 5 wins.
It's huge.
It's massive. And even thinking back to the BYU game last year, you had the near fumble on the opening drive. They, of course, had those big 4th down conversions as well. I don't think any of us are implying if Southern jumps on that ball that ultimately they score on their drive and they go on to win that game. We don't know, but that's where in these type of games, I say these type of games, it's in any football game that you play. I get that and understand it, but when you know, as you said, Coach Poor, neither of these teams have experienced doubt yet. So Southern's in this same boat. Purdue's saying the same thing. Let's try to put them into some adversity because they haven't gone through it yet in week 1. That's where just, man, when that ball bounces, not to say that it's a complete luck, but, man, you got to jump on those bounces and take care of those opportunities, especially when it's clear Southern's the underdog this weekend on Saturday at Ross-Ade.
And taking advantage of those when they do happen. You can't just get a fumble and then go 3 and out. You've got to capitalize on what your defense gave you or what the opposition handed to you.
And that's kind of what I'm alluding to is the response, you know, mentally to maybe it's an adverse situation, or maybe it is like, hey, we got to capitalize on that. And that's when you see yourself having a great opportunity to win these type of games, is when you're on the plus side of those situations.
We'll see if Southern can be on the plus side of those situations come Saturday night. 6:30 Central will be kickoff, which means our pregame coverage will begin at 5:30 across the Saluki Radio Network. A big thank you to Rob Blackman for taking time to join us from the Purdue Football Radio Network as SIU and Purdue this weekend get it rolling. We hope you enjoy this podcast as we will continue to have this throughout the season. So for my partners, Mike Drew, the Coach Pat Poor, I am Luke Martin, saying so long, Saluki Nation. We will see you Saturday in West Lafayette. Go Dogs.
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.